In Washington state, the Democratic and Republican parties date back to statehood. Over the years, they have been joined by a host of minor parties, all vying for voter support. While Washington voters have a reputation for being independent, observers say that parties still play a major role, particularly in helping voters choose among competing political philosophies and ideas.
Washington state traditionally has had a weak party structure, and that shows up in a couple of places. One, we're not required to register by party here in order to vote in most elections, and until very recently, not at all. Most other states, every other state these days, you do have to do that. Where I grew up in California, that was the case. I lived in Oregon, you did. In Alaska, you did. And you know, that then decided which side of the party, which side of the ticket you got to vote on in the primary elections and other things too. You know, you were identified as a Democrat or Republican, or sometimes minor parties. Sometimes you could choose independent.
Parties give people choices. They help people make choices in elections. When we run for president, you've got a Democrat and a Republican to choose from, and it helps people understand you know, which candidates to support, and it gives a context for the issues.
People come and go. Political parties, the major political parties, have been around for literally hundreds of years, far beyond an individual human lifetime. People will be here, they'll live good lives, but then they'll be gone. But the parties endure, and the parties stand for things. The Republican Party, for example, came about in the 1850s largely because of a strong position against slavery. So the political parties are about ideas, about advancing those ideas through platforms, through supporting candidates, and through other means we have. But it's all about ideas.
State parties are most in the spotlight every 4 years during presidential and gubernatorial elections. State party conventions, held in the months leading up to the national conventions, are a chance for the party faithful to rally.
A convention is always an exciting time, and it's an even more exciting time in a presidential year. Our state conventions, we have them every even-numbered year, but in the presidential years, they are longer and there's more work to do. In the presidential year, which we're in today, we not only produce a party platform, which is a statement of principles for the Republican Party, but we also elect delegates and alternates to our national convention.
At the state convention this year, we're going to have a keynote speech from Senator John Kerry. We're very excited he's going to join us. We are going to adopt our platform. We are going to pass resolutions. We will this year be nominating candidates for statewide office because of the top 2 primary. So it's really the high watermark in a 2-year period of Democrats coming together, passing a platform, and doing the business of the party, and listening to our great elected officials give fiery speeches.
The major political parties are sometimes referred to as a big tent that accommodates members who share a general philosophy but may differ on some key issues. Keeping the big tent together is a challenge, and sometimes party members decide they need to strike out on their own.
It is a balancing act for the major political parties, because there's the important principles that people believe in very strongly, that we put in our platform, that we try to build as much support for as possible. But at the same time, you realize that we have to build coalitions of voters that are large enough to get people elected. You have to get to 50% plus 1 for your candidates, or else you are never able to implement any of your policy ideas.
The Democratic Party really is a big tent. We've just got, you know, we have conservative Democrats, moderate Democrats, Lord knows we have liberal Democrats. We have Democrats that are pro-gun and Democrats, you know, that support gun control. We have Democrats obviously on both sides of the issue of choice. We have pro-life and pro-choice Democrats. We have learned, probably bitterly, in the last 20 years, that if you restrict too closely what the definition of a Democrat is, that you don't appeal to all the people that might vote Democrat.
The Libertarian Party started several decades ago, actually the same year I was born, in 1971, in Denver, Colorado. We just had our national convention there, and it was founded out of some of the principles that were kind of radical at the time, and some of them are still pretty radical, but it was founded out of the idea that smaller government is better. People should be free in their own lives to choose how they live, what they do, who they associate with, what kind of medicine they take.
Washington state has a long history of minor political parties. In the 1970s, the colorful Owl Party waged a satirical campaign from Red Kelly's jazz nightclub in Tumwater. The Owls adopted colorful names and flippant campaign positions, all duly noted in the official voter's guide. Voters may have been amused, but others were not, and minor party access to the ballot was made more difficult.
Sometimes we just have candidates that are really fringy. I'll admit it, sometimes there are candidates that I'm glad they're not getting a lot of coverage, but a lot of times we have candidates that are exceptional. Ruth Bennett, Bruce Guthrie. These are examples of candidates that deserved a spot, in my humble opinion, on the floor. They had compelling stories. They had great campaigns. Bruce Guthrie had so many things so many things more than any Libertarian candidate had ever had before. And the fact that he had to mortgage his home and borrow money from friends just to have a spot in the debates shows that the threshold for independent voices is far too high. I mean, let's do it American Idol style. Let's at least have those candidates invited to the first round of the debates, and if people don't respond, if people don't call in and text, 5333, then don't invite them back.
For all political parties, managing an ever-changing group of party activists is a challenge, one that ultimately falls to state party leaders, who also have to attract the votes of an electorate that prides itself on being independent.
We have party activists that might be involved in their local Democratic Party that are involved in running the business of the party on a day-to-day basis, attending the meetings, raising the funds, supporting the candidates. These activists are involved 24/7, 24 months out of a 2-year period. Then we have activists that frankly like to work on political campaigns, and they come by the last 6 months of a 2-year cycle to help a candidate for the legislature or Congress or whatever. We have activists that follow the party through our online website and write a check twice a year, and that's their form of activism.
I think what's ideal is to have a broad swath and diversity of people. I think frankly we're always looking for younger people to get involved in the party, and we need that youth and that energy, but certainly we will not turn away anybody who wants to help us build Republican majorities and elect Republican candidates.
If we win the next election, I can probably get reelected, and if we lose the next election, they're going to be looking for the bum that made that happen, and they may turn their eyes on me, and I may not get elected. I mean, that's what happens in politics.
I'm a big sports fan. I'm a former sports writer, so I do kind of like the manager analogy for the state party chair. You could also look at us as the CEO of the state party, but it's not a dictatorial sort of position where I can just point and tell people you're going to do this and you're going to do that. It's really more of a leadership by persuasion, working with the grassroots of our party.
Washington State has long been known as independent, with relatively weak political parties. Still, the parties continue to play a central role in the political process. For party leaders, it's a matter of policy versus personality.
Some of that comes from our roots as this, populous state. We wanted to do it differently than a lot of other places did. And what it created was this sense of the voter had as being more independent, and the parties as being weak structures within that political machine.
Nowhere is it written in our ruling documents as a government goes that Washington, or America for that matter, is a two-party system. That is something that by default has happened through the media coverage and the processes that we've been using.
I think Democrats feel that we can build a better world. We have faith in people. We think that if we work together, we're stronger than if we work independently. We see the government as the voice of the people, and we think we can build a better society.
I think that the political parties serve an essential role in helping to frame the debate on public issues. And if there were no political parties, then political races would all be about personalities. They would all be about, elect Britney Spears because she's a good dancer, or elect somebody else because they look really nice. Politics should be about ideas.
For more on state political parties, and for more episodes of How Does It Work? A Washington Citizen's Guide to Democracy, visit tvw.org.